it's done. Seated. Well, good morning. Let me add about three pastoral comments to some of the things that are going on around here. For those of you that are Christ Community Church people, check in with this. If you're visiting, if you're new, just kind of put me on hold for a second. Christ Community Church, we have been walking through this capital campaign called the Ripple Effect. A bunch of you turned in stuff last week, and so you're wondering, okay, where are we? Where are we? We're so close, all right? And you're thinking, well, I'm teasing you to kind of get you, right? Here's where the financial part of this, we're really, really close to be able to say we're going to move forward with the plans that we have. But more than the financial, the amount of money piece, it's the amount of people piece that we would really love to see be more. And so I want to encourage you, for a lot of us as we give, we think, hey, my stuff doesn't matter that much. It's not that much. We're more, as leadership, we're more looking at the number of people that are engaged in what we're doing as we walk forward than the total amount of money given. And so I want to encourage you, hey, listen, we've talked about this, we've prayed about this, but we really haven't turned in anything. We've really not really kind of nailed down a commitment. I want to encourage your engagement with the Ripple Effect. You can do that in a couple of ways. One is cards like this that are on both sides of the Welcome Center. To go ahead and fill that out, you can put that in the giving boxes that are in the lobby, or of course you can go to our website /campaign. We love, again, more than the amount is the number of people that we feel like are engaged and a part of what we're doing going forward, right? So with that. Ashley mentioned to you the marriage 6 weeks as we're going to look at marriage. We're calling it the gift of marriage. And I know part of us think, if I show up to a marriage study, people are going to think my marriage, it needs work. Well, let me relieve you of that. Your marriage needs work, as does mine. All of our marriages need work. Let's just own it. We would love for you to be a part. Myself and several of the other guys here on staff who do quite a bit of the counseling with premarital stuff and then postmarital stuff. We have a look at some things, and we would love to walk you through 6 weeks talking about the gift of marriage. And the last thing that I would share with you is 1 minute ago, Christ Community Church Camden, for the first time, is having worship outside of their office building, which is amazing, and it's really, really good. We've done kind of a soft opening at Camden Elementary School, and the hard opening, the grand opening, Christ Community Church in Camden, will be the week before Easter, March the 24th, and then Easter Sunday as well. And so y'all be praying for that, but I just want to let you know, thank you for your prayers, your support in making all of that happen, and excited to see what lies right around the corner. All right. We're in a series that we've called Going Old School. So you see old graphics, old music, etc. And the thought with this is, when the church really began was Acts chapter 2. And what had been 120 followers of Jesus all of a sudden now becomes roughly 3,120. And they've got this big question, what in the world do we do now? I brought a stack of books that, these are books that I have personally walked through with small groups of people. From student ministry when I was doing it there, to life groups, this one right here is life group we did, to small groups of men walking through The amount of resources, this was like a 2-minute pull from my bookshelf. There's other books there. Our women's ministry right now, their book's not even up here. Men's ministry, what they're walking through, not even up here. We have an abundance of resources. The early church had none of this. All right, now, that's not to say they didn't have something really important. One of the cool things that they got to do as the early church started is they never had to hear somebody say, well, we've never done it like that. Because none of the things that they had they done it like that. They got to start from scratch, but they had a resource that perhaps at times we're missing. Acts chapter 2 is where we're going to land. We've been in this passage for the previous 2 weeks, and we're going to land there for these next several weeks as well. Acts chapter 2, verses 42 to 47. This is right after 120 becomes 3,120, and here's what happens. And they were continually devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. And everyone kept feeling a sense of awe, and many wonders and signs were taking place through the apostles. And all those who had believed were together and had all things in common, and they began selling their property and possessions and giving them, sharing them with all as anyone might have need. Day by day, continuing with one mind in the temple, breaking bread from house to house. They were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord was adding to their number, right? I mean, what we just celebrated, the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. Well, now, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. That right there, in about 60 seconds of retelling, didn't happen in 60 seconds. This unfolded. It's very grassroots kind of a thing. They didn't have a manual on all this kind of stuff. But this is how a moment when 120 becomes 3,120 becomes a movement, and you and I are living in the ripple of that. It's still a movement because of, we can count 6 at least pillars that the early church was built on. 2 weeks ago, we talked about they were continually devoted to the apostles' teaching, which we have the record of that in the New Testament. I mean, they gleaned from it. They shaped themselves by it. Last week, we talked about they were continually devoted to fellowship, not just hanging out in the lobby. This was like this almost contractual relationship with each other of, I got your back, you got mine, I'll pick you up when you're down. And then today, we're going to take a look at this third part of devoted to the breaking of bread. I want to remind you of this phrase. Verse 42 again says, they were continually devoted. We've paraphrased that. It's a really important phrase. They had this long-haul, unwavering determination. It's not just my preference. Hey, I'll go to, I'll pray if I feel like it. I'll be committed to this fellowship if I get something out of it in return. If it gets a little old, I'll quit. If it doesn't fit my schedule, I'm probably not going to be there, right? They were locked in to it, and today we're going to, again, focus on the breaking of bread. Verse 42 again says, they were continually devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, the breaking of bread. And when you read that, when you hear that, your mind probably goes in 2 different directions, all right? Is the breaking of bread, is it communion? We celebrated that last week. Or is it just hanging together and eating meals together? All right, so let me verse 42, if you translate it literally, says this, that they were continually devoted to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to the breaking of, and there's a word, the bread. It's an article, and it's included in the Greek. All right, it's not just the breaking of bread. It is technically the breaking of the bread. When you get to verse 46, where that breaking of bread is mentioned again, continuing with one mind in the temple and breaking bread from house to house, it's not, the article is not there. It's not breaking of the bread from house to house. It's just breaking bread. What's the difference? All right, it's just the is the only difference, but it's a massive difference. Because I think what verse 42 is talking about is particular bread, breaking of the bread. And I think verse 42 is talking about the gathered sharing of communion together And then in verse 46, just breaking bread, sharing meals together, is just doing life together. Why is the important? We're going to talk about the breaking of the bread today, and it really comes down to gathering together for worship. Like it's just this moment, when we broke bread last week, it's this moment of celebration. It's this moment of remembering what Jesus has done and honoring him as well. Well, let's explain that a little bit of what that might have looked like in the first century. All of the first followers of Jesus had Jewish backgrounds, and all of those people with Jewish backgrounds were very accustomed to gathering together for we'll just call it worship celebration. They happened to do it on Saturday, and they happened to do it in the synagogue. Jesus did. It was just kind of built into the routine of life. Luke chapter 4, verse 16 to 19. We won't read all of this, but here's what 16 says this. He came to Nazareth, Jesus came to Nazareth, where he'd been brought up, and as was his custom, did it regularly. This is kind of like what we do. He entered the synagogue on the Sabbath and stood up to read. And the scroll of Isaiah the prophet was handed to him, and he unrolled the scroll and found the place. Look, this is just what they did. They went to the synagogue and they gathered together. What did they do when they would gather together? Well, one of the things had to do with instruction. So what we know from just records is that a synagogue official would typically ask multiple people from the congregation to read from the scripture, the Old Testament. And one would be asked, for example, to read from the law. That's the first 5 books of the Old Testament. And someone else would be asked, hey, you read from a section of the prophets. So, hey, you read from a section from the Psalms. And then perhaps another person might be asked to, if needed, translate. I mean, literally to translate, written in Hebrew. Maybe by the time Jesus was born, not all of the Jews spoke fluent in Hebrew, and so they would translate. And then somebody else might be asked to instruct, to explain this. What does all this mean? And over time, it typically, instead of having all these different people in the congregation, it likely fell upon the synagogue official who would do all of those things together. Instruction. A second thing that would happen for them as they gathered together, for the Jews, would be we would describe it as worship. Now, don't think necessarily musical. That came with time, but particularly in Jesus' day, it said it was probably more the written prayers that they would learn and they would walk through together. Right? And again, it's just like this was the pattern of gathering for the believers, but the followers of Jesus did something different. Right? And it's described by Luke as he wrote this. It's described in Acts chapter 2. They would do what as they gathered together? They would break bread. Let me tell you where you didn't break bread. In the synagogue. Like this was Jewish stuff, and if you read the Gospels, you know that the Jewish leadership had their own beef with the followers of Jesus. Well, they're not breaking bread in the synagogue. And they also, by the way, didn't happen to meet on Saturday. They met on the first day of the week. Why did they do that? Because Jesus was resurrected on the first day of the week. So they took part of what they did is they gathered together and they broke bread together on a first day of the week, and they would do it in a variety of different places. Now, so from what we read in Acts, we don't know the exact frequency of how often they did this. They might have done this more than once a week. Don't know. We don't know like their style. What did it look like? Let me show you. This is what we call our order of our worship. This has everything that we're doing this morning. When Ashley comes out, with the songs that we do, we have this printed up for us. We don't have this for anything in the New Testament. Like we don't have, and I have this feeling that God didn't want to give it to us. Because we would be so ridiculously rigid of we got to do it this way for this length of time. So we don't have all of that. What I want to do today is I want to just share with you 3 things that I think are pretty important for us as a local body here for what this gathering should be about. Listen, if you don't follow Jesus, I'm crazy excited and glad that you're here. I'm glad that you came on a day that we celebrate baptism. All right, so, the breaking of bread is one of we call them sacraments, things that we know the New Testament believers did. We practice it as well. Baptism is the other one. We know they did this, and this is available for all followers of Jesus, as is the breaking of bread. But we don't have all the details. So what can we learn? Let me give you three things points about our gathering. One is just the importance of it. The importance of gathering. When the first followers of Jesus started gathering on the first day of the week, nobody told them they had to do that. But they recognized the importance of just being together. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23 to 25. Let's hold firmly to the confession of our hope without wavering. Right? Part of this that, right? It's that long haul, unwavering determination. Let's hold firmly to the confession of our hope, what we believe in, without wavering. For he who promised is faithful. Jesus is good. He's good on his promises. And let's consider how to encourage one another, other people, in love and good deeds. How do I do that? How do I encourage other people? Not forsaking our own assembling together. They gathered together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Why is it important for us? The importance of gathering is not just for you. It is for you. Look, I am by far, if you took all of my gathering times away out of my spiritual life would look radically different. But it's not just for me. You don't come just for you. You also come for the people that are sitting to your left and to your right. That's how we encourage one another. Your presence here, I know it's a hassle. I know you don't love to hear when Ben says, hey, would y'all please move to the middle? And you thinking you're to yourself, I got here early so I can sit on the sides. I know, we know that, all right? I know it's a hassle when it gets kind of crowded, but it makes me, there's something about the gathering together that's for more than just you. I gave my life to Jesus when I was 16 years old. Sophomore in high school. And I was very blessed that our church, where my family went, had a really strong student ministry. That I have over decades evaluated the student ministries at our church, both the ones that I was running and the ones that we have, in a lot of ways by that standard. It was really good. And our student ministry, I just grew in my faith because of being encouraged and engaged in it. And when I was 3 years after I gave my life to Jesus, our student pastor asked me, I'm a freshman in college at this point, and he said, would you help us? Like, just be a part, help with leadership. And I said, I'd love to. And that played a big part of just God's calling in my own life. But the first summer that I was doing that, Gary, our student pastor, asked me, he said, hey, come on our summer trip and be a leader in it. And I said, oh, great, I'd love to. So I carved out a week, and we went and everything. And I noticed some things in my own heart as the week rolled out. And so when the week finished, Gary, we got together and having lunch or whatever, and he said, all right, how was the week? And I said, I don't know. I didn't get as much out of it as the previous ones. And he said, I didn't ask you to come along to get something out of it. I asked you to come along to give something. And it just, so this isn't just about me. Now listen, the crazy thing is I did get a lot out of it. It was just different. It was different. Your presence here is meaningful for other people as well. I don't say that because, I get paid per number of people. I say it because you make the people around you better, and as you do that, you become better as well. That's one of the reasons why we planted in Camden. It's one of the reasons why while they were very comfortable meeting in the office building, we're moving to the elementary school, is because it's important for us to gather together and more of us to do that. Well, let me move to the second. It's the importance of gathering, but the second is the centrality of Jesus. Right? Just the centrality of who Jesus is. It's interesting to me that when when Luke, who wrote the book of Acts, picked his wording for what they were doing, he didn't say they were continually devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and gathering together for worship. He said the breaking of the bread because of all the things that we do, of all the things that we as a church do, I cannot think of anything that is more Jesus-focused than communion. Where we remember, we think it's just about Jesus. This is the centrality of Jesus. Let me give you a quote. I put this on my phone because I'm like, this is keepable. You heard this morning from a young girl being baptized. Jesus is my light, my life, and my love. Thank you, Liberty, for sharing that. That is Jesus focused. We make a big deal out of who Jesus is. And if we stop, then you need to call us in to check. Listen, we're not, our focus here is not to, make your life better. Our focus here is not to share with you the political agenda that we have and we think you ought to have to. Our focus here is not even to make you a better, citizen of the community. Like, I at least hope the first and third happen here. I hope your life does get better, and I hope that you do become a better citizen of our community. But that's not what we're here for. The focus on what we do is to make a whole lot out of who Jesus is. What he's done, all the glory and the honor to the Son. That's it. Listen to Paul's words. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. When I came to you, brothers and sisters, Paul had made this visit to Corinth and had ministered to them. When I came to you, brothers and sisters, I did not come as someone superior in speaking ability or wisdom, as I proclaimed to you the testimony of God. And then he says this, for I determined to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. That's the central focus. Now, I know Paul talked about other things than Jesus and his crucifixion. How do I know that? Because he wrote letters to these very same people, and he talks about a whole lot of other stuff other than just Jesus and him crucified. So what's the point? I don't want to know anything but Jesus Christ and him crucified. He's talking about the centrality of Jesus. It's all about him, and if we miss him in our gathering, we're really missing out, and we're wasting your time. So if we ever get to that point, and you feel like, where's Jesus in all this stuff that we're doing? You don't have the privilege of coming to us. You have the responsibility to come to us and say, hey, where's Jesus? Centrality of Jesus. I want to take just a moment to as well talk about this, the role of style. Now, again, we don't have their style recorded for us. When I'm talking about style, I'm talking about like, hey, is the music loud or is it soft? Is it old stuff or is it new stuff? Are we casual or do we dress up more? Is the service more for, people that already follow Jesus, we're going to make you sharper? Or is the service for everybody with the heart of, we're going to make all of us one step closer? All right, so some of those are just, they're philosophies, things, but a lot of that's just style. Most of us would say, not all of us would say this, most of us would say, and I would say this, style is not critical. Like, we're not married to the style that we have here. You come back in 5 years, and if we're not doing things a little bit different, there's probably a problem. Right? We're not married to the style here, but most of us, right, would say style's not essential. But here's what most of us mean when we say style is not that important. As long as you're doing it my style, right? And here's why we think that. See, I think my style's the best. And the reason why I think my style is the best is because I feel like everybody's like me. Well, here's the truth. Not everybody is like me, thank Jesus. And my style might be the best for me, but it might not be the best for everybody. So no big shocker to you, I don't love traditional stuff. But I love that there are churches in our area that gravitate to traditional stuff. You know why? Because there are a lot of people in our area that love traditional things. And style is not critical. It's interesting, we had a conversation among our staff a couple weeks ago. Several of the people on staff, we were talking about this whole issue, and I raised it. Hey, how important do you think style is on what we do on a Sunday morning? And typically, here's how we sit. We're just like, we're kicked back. We're just kind of real casual. And when I asked how, and somebody starts giving an answer, and then everybody starts sitting up and leaning in, right? And it became very, very clear to me, style is apparently important. Or at least we say it's not critical, but we think it's pretty important. Why is style important? Why have churches over the years had worship wars When they go to battle over it. Churches split over things like the style of music that we do. Why is that? It's because we think style is more important than we give hints at. So let me share with you from a leadership perspective, why do we have the style that we do? And I'll give you a little bit of an inside look at kind of some of the ways that we measure, should we do this, should we not do this, should we do it this way or not? We recognize that you have a gazillion options for style things when it comes to churches, right? And that's just kind of one of the blessings, I think, of our day. 100 years ago, you kind of probably had like 2 options. But now you've got like almost a limited amount. What we try to do as we set up services, we pick style, what kind of songs, we try to eliminate distractions. When it comes to you and you hearing from the Lord and you experiencing what God wants to do in your own life, eliminate distractions. Now, on the surface level, that means things like, we hope there's not typos on the screen. We hope that, there's not a lot of feedback, right? So our tech team is amazing and all that kind of stuff. That's eliminating distraction. But style can also become a distraction, right? So if you're a person like me and I like the more modern, non-traditional, then if I come on a Sunday morning, all of a sudden I go, whoa, I didn't expect that we were going to sing 4 hymns with organ music. Right? It can be a distraction. I'm going to jump back to that in a second. So whose distraction are we trying to eliminate? We don't design worship so that I can have it exactly the way I want it. All right, there's things that I would change right now in the way we do things, but it's not my style that I'm mentioning. It's our style, and it's not just our style of those of us in CCC. Our heart is that we have the style that is the heart language of the people that don't know Jesus yet. Right? So if that's a type of music that I might not love, but people that don't know Jesus in our community, is the best as we can figure that out, if that helps them in their style and their heart language, we're going to go in that direction. Because that's who we are. Let me share with you, we've done this each week. How do we go from old school? This is Acts 2:42 to 47. How do we go that to today? How do we go old school to new school? I'm going to give you 3 questions that you and I have to ask. I got to ask this as a leader. I also have to ask this just as a personal follower of Jesus. One is this: do I have long-haul, unwavering determination to the gathered worship of Jesus? It's a fancy word for, am I committed to gathering together with others? By nature of the fact that you're here, there's at least a lean in that direction. But what happens when I just get a little tired of it? What happens when it's just a little bit of a convenience, and I normally come at 9:30, but I got something come up on 9:30, and frankly, 8:08 sounds like 3 in the morning. And I just, right? Do I have a long-haul, unwavering determination to the public worship of Jesus? I know what COVID did. I know what COVID did, and it got all of us, kind of knocked all of us off our feet, and a lot of us, it took a while to get back. But, I don't say this to shame you if you happen to be gone next week, right? But am I just locked in not just because my soul needs it? Like, my soul needed this morning. It's just so good to hear the stories of people and how Jesus has wrecked people's lives and turned them finally right side up. It's good for me, but it's also good for the people around me when I'm present, and you as well. And frankly, who it's best for ought to be Jesus. All right? Second question is, can I see God outside of my style? In other words, if it's not my preferred style, can I still see and experience Jesus in a style that's not my preference? So, for example, the way we do communion. And on most Sundays when we're taking communion, I'm not the one leading it. So I'm just like you are. I'm sitting and listening. But if it bothers me, the way in which we do it, I wish we would rather, right? I don't want to eat those small little cardboard wafer things. I want real bread. And I'm upset about that. What is wrong with me? I mean, literally, this isn't about me. This is like the breaking of the bread to honor and celebrate and remember Jesus. And if I get hung up on style, what is wrong with? Can I see and experience God outside of my preferred style? If I'm away on vacation or wherever and I'm somebody else's church and I experience, and it's not like I like, but can I experience Jesus outside of that? And if not, I've got to do some heart checking. And then third is Jesus elevated in our gathering? Now, do we make much of Jesus? When our Sunday morning, and yours is going to be wrapped up here in a moment, and you're going to get in your car and you're going to drive away, what will Jesus think about our time together? Will he be honored? Will he feel like, man, they made a lot about me this morning? But it's not just in our gathering, is he honored in me as well? If you looked up, I've shared this with you in the past, if you look up the word worship in its usage in the New Testament, and it's not thousands of times, but if you looked up the times that the word worship is used in the New Testament, most of the times, almost all of the times that it is used, it is not musical. Because this morning you walk out of here and somebody says, how was the worship today? You're thinking first half of our service, right? The music. But the New Testament, when the word worship is used, most of the time not talking about music. So you get an instance, for example, where the disciples are in a boat, storms crashing in everywhere. I mean, they're terrified. Jesus is asleep of all things. So these fishermen who should know the water look at Jesus, who is a carpenter, who shouldn't know the water, and they beg him, Lord, wake up, Lord, we're perishing, we're perishing. He gets up, peace be still, and it's like nothing. The sea is like glass. And the scripture tells us, and they worshiped him. And I don't think that means that Peter looked at John and said, hey, look, I'll do tenor, you do bass, right? What song do we want to do? Right? These are 12 dudes in a boat. They're not singing. They worshiped him. What does that mean? I don't know. A man who's been born blind and he experiences Jesus, and Jesus spits in the dirt and makes mud, rubs it on his eyes, and all of a sudden he can see, and it says he worshiped him. He sang him a solo. No. What does worship in me look like? What does it mean? Is Jesus elevated in my life? What does that mean? Romans chapter 12, verse 1 says this. I urge you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice. That hurts. Surrender. Present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. Thank you. That's worship? Yes. Is Jesus honored in my worship, my surrendering, my giving, my whatever it is? Hey, first century, again, when they gathered together, I can say this with bold confidence. No follower of Jesus in the first century asked another follower of Jesus, hey, are you going to go to church today? They didn't call it that. Hey, let's go assemble together for the public declaration, honoring, glorifying of who Jesus did. It's important. It's important. Let me pray for us. Lord Jesus, thank you. I know you have your own challenges for each of us. I'm grateful for this morning as we have gathered together, for each one that's here today. For those who were baptized today, this risky step that they took, and for the way that it has made all the rest of us richer in our faith. But our simple presence does that too. And I do, Jesus, my biggest desire on a Sunday morning is that you get made much of, and that when we leave, you think that you've been honored well. So thank you. Thank you.